Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning. I want to talk about overcoming fear, overcoming depression and anxiety. We are going through, that kind of season actually where things are just quite hectic. And I just felt that, okay, let me contribute something from the little that I know about how to keep it together. It's quite a tricky season. It's quite a challenging season. So I just hope people will join on board. I'll wait for one or two people, and maybe you can have your questions about what you want to know this morning about the subject of mental health. I just, yeah. So if you are with me, we will talk quickly. It's quite a nerve-wracking season. Nerves are everywhere. Corona is doing its thing. But I've got a couple of things that I wanted to share with you that I think are quite important and vital about the issues of mental health. How do I keep it all together in my mind? Because once your mind loses it, there are so many things you can get wrong. So the most important thing is to try and keep up your spirits, try and make things work, try and keep things together. How do I keep going in this season? So thank you for joining me. I want us to really touch on the issues of mental health. How do I keep it together? How do I keep myself from losing it? So please, if you want to ask a question, you can go ahead. I will try and answer those things. But I've got a couple of points that I think are key, just as we talk about mental health. What is my advice about dealing with fear, depression, and anxiety from a life coaching perspective? Okay, from a life coaching perspective, how do we keep it together? Right. So there's a couple of things we can learn from a cell phone. This thing, it can teach you a lot about how to do life, how to keep it all together. It's a very, very challenging time. But I want to say to you that the number one tip that I will say we need to look at is deal with the always on culture. Deal with the always on culture. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that we are always on. We are a generation that is always on. We are always on something, always on to something, always connected to something. We are always on, whether it is social media, whether it is, trying to keep up with anybody else that's out there. We need to, if you are going to protect your mental health, you need to treat the always on culture that we have in society. We can learn so much from people that the older folk. I'm learning in these days of my life to spend time with the old folk. Yes, just yesterday I was sitting listening to a man. She just lost his wife about this last year from a sickness that was quite hectic. And I just spent those 15 minutes with him. We were doing food puzzles. So don't think I was breaking the law. But we were sitting and we were talking, and I was just listening more to the wisdom of generations. He may not have a degree, he may not have all the steps of qualifications that I have, blah, 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 blah. But listening was so helpful. I want to say to us, guys, the always on culture is destroying us. The always on to something, always trying to get something done and not being able. And I'm trying to keep this all together. You need to treat the always on culture. Ask yourself, why am I always on? Why do I always have to know what's going on? When you go into the mall, where you go into the airport, there's always that that Wi-Fi that you get that's always gotta say always on. And that thing can keep you so distracted. People have gotten into accidents because of being always on. People have gotten hurt and they've hurt others because of always being on. Just making up your mind to say, okay, fine. Nake, I'm going to go onto somebody's profile. I mean, a while back, I was just looking at my phone and I ran into somebody that I went to school with, started going through their profile, and I started going through the motions again, and you start seeing, oh, this person is now here and here and here, and you start getting hooked and getting messed up in your mind and having your thoughts dragging for hours. We need to deal with the always on culture. So, number two, learn to log off. Learn to log off. We're treating issues of mental health. How do I protect my mental health? How do I ensure that I play my part in protecting my mental health? Learn to log off. There is a log off button when you do computers. There's a button there that says log off, and we don't know how to log off in life. You know, I'm listening to somebody who's they call them a memory coach, and one of the things they say is that to always have music playing 24/7, to always have people talking 24/7, and not to be able to appreciate silence destroys your memory. It destroys your ability to think soberly about issues. So it's vital for us to begin to challenge ourselves to say, why do I always have to have the TV on? Why do I always have to have something happening, information being processed? When does my mind take the break? I know that we are always trying to hustle. It's very difficult times, right? You are always hustling, but there's something called breakdown, right? There's something called breaking down. And breaking down is something that happens when you are always running. A car that is always running and doesn't stop depletes itself of energy, right? That's why if you're driving a BMW or these latest cars, when they get to a stop sign, what do they do, class? What happens is that the car switches off because they have learned that if the car switches off, it saves energy. So it gets me to the next point, right? And that point, it says, number 3, you need to adopt a able to switch off mode. You need to be able to switch off. If you can't switch off, you are hurting your system, both psychologically, in fact, psychologically, spiritually, and mentally. You are hurting your system. So you need to learn how to adopt the able to switch off mode. Okay? So you need to be able to deal with that thing of, why do I always have to be in a hurry? Why do I always have to be up to something? Sometimes peace is something that is done when you are just being still. And in the Bible, we are taught about how Jesus, and in fact, not Jesus, but God, and I'll start with God. He worked for 6 days, and for the 7th one, he quit. Why? Because he was teaching us a lesson to say rest should be part of your life. Rest should be part of what you do. Rest should be ingrained into your system. You don't always have to be at work, because if you don't rest, then what it says is that you are not depending on grace. Because even when you are sleeping, I heard somebody say, when I'm sleeping, that's when I'm at my most dangerous, because that is when God really begins to step up and he deals with all the witches that are out there. That is very, very interesting. So depend on the grace of God, that when you are resting and recuperating, God is still taking care of business. That's why the Bible says he neither sleeps nor slumbers. We are killing our mental health. We are killing our mental health because we don't know how to rest. And our bodies need rest. Our mind needs rest. So you need to be able to deal with you need to have the able to switch off mode. That's an ability and it's an empowerment. There is a button that is the most powerful button on this phone. Very powerful. And it's called the switch off button. It's this one. It's the one that switches off. It's the one that says, I need a break. So, when was the last time when you actually took your phone and you switched it off? There's that button on the phone that says, switch me off. And we hardly ever use that thing. And that is why we're suffering mentally. We're dealing with anxiety and fear because you are always trying to get the latest news, trying to find out what's really going on, who's doing what and whatever. I'm learning how to deal with the issue of being distracted all the time. Each and every time when your phone rings, you could be busy with something and then something else takes over. And now all of a sudden, what's happening? You shift from this activity to another one that's distracting you. You always have to check your WhatsApp, always have to check your status. It affects the processing of information because you keep having all these breaks. Your brain cannot assimilate all the information because there are too many cuts. That's quite interesting. So we need to learn how to be focused and not allow ourselves to be distracted. So one of the things that helps us to overcome is for us to learn how to switch off. You don't always have to be on your phone. You don't always have to be on TV. Sometimes you need to switch them off and walk. You don't have to take your phone to the loo. You can go there surely without it. So that always on thing, we need to really treat it. Number 4, we need to deal with our irrational and rational fears. Irrational fears are your phobias, things that really don't have a rational explanation behind them over why you are afraid, like being afraid of cockroaches and stuff. And, those are irrational fears. You need to be able to process things properly to say, but what's the probability of me being hit by an airplane? It's very, very low. So why should I be afraid? Or why am I afraid of going onto an airplane? That's an irrational fear, because airplanes are actually the safest of all transport modes, I think. So those are things that you need to begin to think about. Treat your fears and engage your fears and process them properly so that they don't become those things that hinder you from living an effective life. So please go ahead and ask questions if you have them. Then there are things called rational fears, like the issue of, can I contract this? Can I not contract that? If you have sex, outside of the bounds of protection, you are bound to contract all kinds of scary things if you are in a relationship that is not covenanted. So you need to ensure, obviously, that then those rational fears, you engage with them properly. You need to ensure that you think through whatever that you need to think through. So challenge those fears. Okay, there may be real fears that are there about the economy and everything, but be careful of being fatalistic in your thinking and actually saying, I'm doomed, I'm done, I'm finished. And that's the next point that I want to treat. That is in talking about number 5, stop catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is a term that talks to us about thinking the worst case scenario in everything that you go through. It becomes a worst case scenario. I'm going to die. My family's going to die. I'm going to lose my job and I'll never get another one. I'm going to lose my cars and I'll never get other ones. So there are all these things that are going on in your mind, and it's called catastrophizing. What is the likelihood of you dying and never recovering from this situation? If you believe in God, if you believe in human potential to come back, to thrive each and every time things have gone wrong, then you should not be catastrophizing. We should be the kind of people that will be resilient, have a high resilience quotient, that are going to be saying, even in the midst of the fear, the anxiety, and the depression that's taking place, mine is to stand my guard, mine is to have faith, mine is to trust that things are going to work themselves out. I should not be catastrophizing. I should not be freaking out at the moment. I should not be sweating into a point where I think I need to end my life. So catastrophizing is a very, very dangerous thing that you need to be careful of. Don't always think the worst. I know we are the kind of people that have seen so many horrible things, but don't always think the worst. I would say to you, you are not going to lose anything from thinking the best out of situations. I'm not saying think yourself crazy and insane, but I'm saying rather than thinking your worst, think your best. Okay, number 6, you need to discard faulty coping mechanisms like overeating and binge eating. Just practices that are not okay. So you need to avoid those things. Faulty coping mechanisms can even exacerbate depression and anxiety. The stuff that you are eating, it messes up your system. I'm learning more and more about how to treat my mind. And when I listen to memory experts and all kinds of people, one of the things they are saying is that the food that we are eating is so much junk, and it's pushing us to a place of depression and anxiety. And you may look like you're becoming a bit cynical, but it's cool to begin to research on herbs, research on things that are good for the system, research on the right food to eat, As years are going by, I'm realizing that I'm not growing any younger, and my system cannot take as much junk as I used to take before. I mean, I'm seeing doctors and all kinds of things. But one thing I'm beginning to see is that there is a strong relationship between the food we eat and the mood of our minds, and our general mood and our energy levels. So you need to be careful of how you cope with some of the stuff that goes on. Many of us, we are struggling. We are dumping um, memories behind us. We are not processing issues properly. Our coping mechanisms are not fine. We lash out on people. We are full of rage, full of negative energy, full of envy. And those kind of things are not working out for us. So, what you need to do is practice something called self compassion. You need to learn to be compassionate to yourself. And I was looking at somebody who was saying, yeah, I always hear people saying, forgive yourself. Yes, you should. You should learn to forgive yourself. If you have gone through challenges and it's been tough, there have been things that you were going through that were not exactly nice, one thing that you need to learn to do is learn to forgive yourself. Learn to come to a point where you are self-compassionate. You realize that I need to take care of myself. I need to practice self-care. I need to be mindful of the stuff that I allow into my system, because there's that thing in computers that's called garbage in, garbage out. What you allow into your system affects you, whether it's what you see, what you hear. That is why it's important to limit multimedia, to limit the power of technology over you, so that you are not always spellbound and caught up on what is going on. Because the truth is, garbage in and garbage out is a reality. It will affect you if you are always absorbing all this negative energy. I don't like negative energy. I don't like hanging around negative people. And that is what keeps my spirit high. I hardly ever watch TV. When I watch TV, I watch it probably because I want to get distracted or something. Actually, somebody was saying this, that you are at your most vulnerable when you're watching television, because you are absorbing every single thing. That is why you find people who are watching soapies, right? They might end up getting so engrossed to a point where even when they meet the character, the real person at the mall, what do? They'll go to the person, yasijwayela wena, why ushaya uSuzi, why wenze so? And the people can't distinguish between reality and what is on the screen. That shows you the power of what happens at that moment. At that moment, your mind is just absorbing what is going on. So I want to encourage us. Let us begin to develop new habits, new coping mechanisms. Some people will go and buy a lot of chocolate and eat it because they were dumped and all the other stuff. You need to begin to learn new ways of how to cope. Include exercise into your daily habits, as part of your daily routine. In my early 20s and in my 20s, just in my 20s, one of the challenges that I had was the fact that because I was always speaking and I was doing quite a lot of speaking, I never took care of my health. It was the last thing that I used to do. I would always be in and out of these sessions where I was ministering and speaking, and and my body took a serious knock in those years, because I started preaching very early. In those years, what happened was that my body took a dive, and it's only now, years later, where I'm beginning to realize that you need to begin to take care of this body, because a healthy mind stays in a healthy body and you will have a healthy spirit. So everything has to be balanced. So I know I'm bashing a lot of what's happening on TV, but if you consistently are always trying to keep up with the numbers, who's dying, how many people have died, why are they dying, all kinds of things going on, you are not going to be sane. You are not going to be happy. You are not going to be okay. because all that information is going to get to you at some point. It's going to get to you at some point. You're going to have a mind that is cluttered. You need to learn how to declutter your life. You need to learn to declutter your life. So, what's the next thing? I got stuck there on the issues of coping mechanisms, right? What's the next thing? Actually, we're still at number 6, faulty coping mechanisms. Watch your meditations. Watch you meditate on. Watch what thoughts you engage with. Your thought life is a very important part of ensuring that mentally you remain healthy. Please keep the questions coming. If you have any questions, I'd like to engage with you about the subject of overcoming depression, fear, and anxiety, mental health in this season and even after the season. So one of the things that I believe is amazingly important is for you to learn to take care of your thoughts. Watch what you think. Watch the thoughts that you entertain. So the question that becomes, what thoughts are you currently entertaining? What thoughts are you currently allowing to be part of your everyday life? You can't just say, I'm a subject of my thoughts. Your thoughts are your thoughts. They are your possession. And it is possible for you to learn how to train yourself to think accordingly, to think the way you want to think. So it's all about what you engage with, the information that you engage with during your time when you're awake and alive. That information ends up being part of your system. So if you're not a person that reads books, learn how to read books. If you're not a person, years ago I was challenged by this man that even if you don't understand what's happening on CNBC, watch CNBC sometimes and see what's happening in the world and begin to see how winners are thinking, how champions are thinking. Then it will pull you out of fear, pull you out of depression, pull you out of anxiety. Sometimes just going on, I will watch a movie that is funny, a comedy. I'm not a movie person, but when I feel that my mood is not okay, I will engage a movie. I will engage something that's going to get me smiling, and it changes my whole mood. What you focus on matters. So, number 7, use your faith. In other words, it has been proven that in order for you to be wellness, you need to have a spiritual life. Okay? You need to have a spiritual life, and it needs to be an active life. In other words, learn how to pray, learn how to meditate, learn how to engage in scripture. It's a very important part of life. People that pray are people that have mostly been proven to be people that have a strong sense of wellness in their system. If you can keep your spiritual life vibrant, okay, then you are guaranteeing that your wellness will go up. Your mood, your thoughts will be more livelier thoughts. So it's important that you ensure that your spiritual life is okay, your faith is okay. Number 8, speak out when you're not feeling well. Remember, we are talking about fear, depression, and anxiety. If you are not feeling well, build some solid relationships that you can use for challenging times. There's something called social support, which is a very important part of being well. Social support is a very important part of being well. And a lot of people tend to build very shallow relationships with people. A lot. Shallow relationships are not good, because if you have too many shallow relationships, when the chips are down, you won't have anybody to really speak to. Or when you speak to them, they won't really add any value to the conversation, or they will spread information and misinformation and disinformation. So I want to encourage you, in order for you to overcome fear, depression, and anxiety, it might take you a bit of time, but build solid relationships based on trust, based on faithfulness, based on time, because there are times when you're just going to need somebody to talk to. And it's going to help you when you've got people that you can freely open up to. And I remember years ago, I was having a serious problem. I was not feeling well at all. And for about a week or two, I was just messing up. I'd plates would drop midway when I was holding them. It was not a nice season. It was not a good season. But what helped in that season was that I had some people that I could go to, and I set up an appointment with one of my friends, and we sat down, and I'm like, hey, look, I'm not doing okay. What can you advise? And that conversation, I think it lasted for an hour. When I left them, and I felt so free. Build relationships. Spend time in relationships. Build trustworthy relationships that you can use and leverage on when your chips are down. That is a very important part of life. Debriefing is an important part of life, and just doing life. Number 9, try and challenge toxic environments in your life. Identify them and try and find a way outside of them. Okay? Because toxic environments are unhealthy. One of the most toxic environments that I've seen, and that's a classic example of a toxic environment, is Twitter. We've seen what just happened this week, where 2 contestants, people that were trying to get into Miss South Africa, were decimated because of some choices that they made, because of some people also that had agendas. I think it was 3 agendas on social media to take each other down. It's horrible how the world can become such a toxic environment. So learn how to identify toxic environments and avoid them. And don't engage in toxic activities. I'm a proponent of keep peace by all means with all people. You don't always have to be engaging and combative with everybody. I'm not saying be a doormat, but what I'm saying is that negative energy does not sit well on human beings. Research has shown that people who are combatants, warriors, and soldiers, when they come back from war, and so many studies were done of soldiers that went to Vietnam in America, right? When they came back, they could not do normal life. They were not normal. They battled to do life because they had engaged in all this negative energy. They had all this trauma inside of them that had no outlet, and they lived in an environment where they were hyper alert, 24/7, hyper alert. And so it was very, very difficult for them to do normal life when they came back. And a lot of them committed suicide. A lot of them developed all these conditions because negative energy doesn't sit well on human beings. So it's important that you can't always be fighting. You can't. It's not normal that you are always fighting people. You've got all this negative energy. It's not healthy for your mind. It's not healthy for your brain. You develop all kinds of conditions when you're like that. So it's important for you to stand against being involved in negative and toxic environments where you're always fighting. I was thinking about it also that, given prosperity, it's always good for a person to find a place with good foundations, a house where there's no fights with the neighbors, a house where you don't have to be stressed about, your stuff comes into my yard, your dogs are coming to my yard. We need to live a prosperous life. Is a life where one is at peace and at rest most of the time. So developing that sense of rest. And by the way, guys, being on holiday is not a luxury. It's a part of what we are meant to do in life. Rest should be part of our lives, because when you wake up, then you are at your most effective. Most people think at times I'm endorsing being lazy and not doing work. No. In 7 days, there's that one day off. The other 6 days, you are working your butt off. You are working, you are doing what you need to do as a man and as a woman, get the stuff done. But when you can feel that your system is not okay, it is not okay, and you need to find a way of healing. Research shows also that when you are resting, your cells are rebuilding. Your cells are rebuilding. So if you don't rest, then your cells don't rebuild. Okay? So it's important for you to allow for the time of rest. It's important for you to allow yourself to recover and to rest. Okay, I hope you guys still have questions. I'm nearly done. If you have any questions, please ask. We are talking about how to overcome fear, depression, and anxiety. Okay, so you need to watch your connections. You need to watch what you connect to. That's another lesson from a cell phone. Okay, I did a course on cybersecurity recently, and one of the things that they said was that if people want to steal information from you, they know you like free information. You like free Wi-Fi network. So they will just probably write some very interesting tag on to say free Wi-Fi. And then you log on and you get onto an insecure or unsecured network. And that is how your information can get phished or stolen and taken, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble because of bad connections. So it's important to ask yourself, what have I been connecting to recently? What networks, what people, what group of people, what information have I connected with? Because the information or the networks that you connect with, they will have an effect on your mental health. Have you ever been on a WhatsApp group that just works your nerves? It just works your nerves. You are just always mad. So I don't like being put onto networks and groups and things I don't understand, because now I'm piling on more information to what I have. There are certain things I have learned I need to say no to for the sake of my mental health, because I don't want to be anxious and fearful. You know, I get videos that I don't understand and all the other stuff. Like now, people are scared of 5G. They're scared to walk outside. There is so much fear because of disinformation and misinformation. So get your information from credible sources. What are you connected to? What is your network connecting to? Limit the information that gets processed by your brain so that only vital or necessary or useful information hits your system. So the question then becomes, what information has been hitting your system lately? So it's one of the things that also we can learn from a cell phone, that it's important not to connect to every single network that you find lying around. It's not good. It puts your mind at a very, very dangerous, precarious place because you haven't been careful about what you are connecting to. So it's very important then to watch your connections. Number 10, remember how far you have come. We are talking about how to overcome fear, depression, and anxiety. A lot of people have faced a time in their lives, for the first time in their lives, where they've lost part of their salaries, they've had salary cuts. Some people have had retrenchment letters, some have been processed. Some people have had to deal with the fact that they've fallen short on some payments, and it's a very, very anxious time. But I want to say to you today, one of the ways that you can overcome fear, depression, and anxiety and in the state is to remember how far you have come. How far you have come. All of the hurdles that you have gone through in life to get to this point. It's 2020, you are still alive. And that is quite an interesting thing, because there are people that could not wake up today, but you woke up. And that should say to you that there is still potential. There is still something that can still happen with this moment in my life. There's still a lot of things that are good that can still potentially happen. Okay? Yes, we've all been hit by surprise. We are living in a VUCA environment, the VUCA world, where things are volatile, things are, they are chaotic, they are ambiguous, they are uncertain. It's a VUCA world. But we also believe in miracles. We also believe in the fact that dreams can still come true. Remember what you've gone through. Remember some of the doors that shut in your face, but you always made it through. And somehow there was a way that was made when it looked like things were done for. So I want you to gain the right perspective and not to see things as gloom and doom. I said this previously, to say the world will always remain broken to anybody that is wearing cracked lenses. These things, your lenses in life are important. In this season, it's a season where you can actually see great opportunities coming ahead. Interest rates have gone down recently. The interest rates have gone down again. It gives an opportunity to people who had a bit of saving to actually plow that money into their houses, to their cars, to some things that were potentially going to have extremely high interest. Now is the right time. I mean, yesterday I went to go pour petrol, and my car generally over the last month, it was 700 and something to fill up the tank. And I went there and it barely could get to 600. And I was sitting there and thinking to myself, things are tough, but petrol has gone down. So even in uncertain times, even in these challenging circumstances, it still allows an opportunity for us to expand and to grow and to learn and to flourish, even in these uncertain times. It still provides an opportunity. So sleep, instead of sleeping with your phone, sleep with your pen and paper, because just when you are resting can be a time when you can regroup and rebuild. Thoughts and great ideas can come. I'm coming to that point once again in my life where I'm learning how to write again. Anybody that still remembers the art of writing? I'm a technology guy. I'm learning so much about technology. I've always been into technology. So it's giving me a fresh perspective and a fresh opportunity to learn about how to process information again. So what I'm saying to us right now is that remember how far you have come. Remember how far you have come. I was reading an article, I saw headlines about the construction sector and the fact that the construction sector has contracted so much. Somebody's actually asking, I think it was MoneyWeb, and they were asking, will the construction sector ever be restored again? It will. Yes, it may not happen tomorrow, but it will. There are challenges that come our way, but we as human beings are people that have always been able to bounce back. Look at how far you have come, from sickness, from near-death experiences, from being unemployed. All kinds of challenges, all kinds of things have come your way, and you've been able to bounce back. There is something called human resilience, and each and every one of us has it. That's the ability to bounce back. Okay? So I want you to remember how far you've come. I want you to remember the strides that you have made in life. I want you to remember when it all looked like this thing is never going to work out. And remember how far you have come. Because if you can remember how far you have come, then you can surely bounce back from whatever has hit your life. You can surely make it. Okay, so that was number 10. Number 11 is about focus elsewhere. And that joins back to the issue of looking for opportunities. In Japan, there is an art form called kintsugi. And in kintsugi, what happens is that cups can fall, bowls can break, right? And generally what we would do is just throw a cup, a porcelain cup that is broken. You take it, you toss it, because you're like, no, this thing will never work again. But in Japan, what they do is they take all those broken pieces and they look, there is this glue that they have. It's golden glue. They use it to put back that bowl. They put it back together. They take the cup, they put it back together, and it becomes an art piece with a new lease on life. Doesn't matter how broken you are. There is a way of being put back together and being repurposed. Oh, wow, man, that's a good word. Being repurposed, right? And repackaged, and you being able to sell yourself once again to life, to be given back life. It may be in a new way, because when you've gone through trauma, you may not be the same person that you were before, but you are still a powerful individual that still has a lot to offer in life. So it's important for us to really look at the right stuff, to focus on what is important, to focus on what is really necessary and what can really build me up at this moment. I'm closing. The last bit is some free advice there is keep planning. Okay? One of the things that causes fear, depression, and anxiety is that you ain't got no plans, you ain't got no goals, you ain't got nothing to look forward to. It's almost like destiny has died. It's almost like purpose has died. Keep planning. Miracles still happen. Opportunities still come. Prepare that CV and make sure that all those things that you've been thinking about, you still try and do them. Okay? You still try and plan for them. If it's that business, still try and plan. You need to try and do life as much as possible. I'm not saying try and do it the same way you used to do it before viruses hit, but still try and do life. Still try and go out there. Somebody was saying this, and I thought it was quite amazing to say, do each day as much as you are confined at home. Do each day as much as possible like you would. Don't start the day, go through almost the whole day without bathing almost every single day. Wake up, bath, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, go to the desk somewhere, or do whatever work you can wherever you are. But try and carry on with life, because in that you are saying, I'm still willing to engage in this life thing. So today I really wanted to engage on the issue of overcoming fear, depression, and anxiety at this moment. It's been a quite tough time for a lot of people. It's been quite anxiety bringing. People are just anxious. But in most cases, I've learned that we've made it through far more. There's a lot of stuff we've gone through that has been tough, that has been difficult, and but we've made it. So if you don't have any questions, I'm going to wrap it up right now to say to you, we've made it through a lot as human beings, and I believe that with the mind being at the right place, because you become what you think, right? If your mind is okay, then you'll be able to make it even in the hardest of circumstances. So I wish you well, and if you found this useful, share it. This is a podcast, in other words, also. So yeah, but I think most importantly, I just wanted to treat the subject of overcoming fear and anxiety and making sure that we are all on the same page and all trying to get through this life thing and do our best to survive this season. Another short advice is the fact that learn how to do things that will ease your mind, right? And stop you from overthinking and ruminating and getting lost in negative thoughts. Whether it's drinking tea or juice or eating fruit, whatever it is that gets you in the right mood, try and do it, because we need to keep our minds fresh, because there's still a lot of living to do. Okay, thank you so much for engaging with me. I really appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.